Navistar is celebrating 75 years of diesel engine leadership. What does that mean to you and me? What does that mean to the way we live? It's not an exaggeration to say the world would be a lot different without the diesel engine. Its benefits can be found everywhere, sometimes in surprising ways. Join us as we take you through the history of the diesel engine and see that its history is the history of modern agriculture, of the growth of modern America, and of industrialization around the world. Our story begins not with the diesel engine, but with an America built around agriculture. At our country's infancy, most Americans were farmers, and their worlds didn't embody much more than their families, their crops, a few animals, and the nearest town to trade in. Farming was hard work. People harvested with hand tools like the sickle and cradle. It could take a group of farmers and their families all day to harvest a single acre of grain. Farming was slow, cumbersome, and backbreaking. Then came a gentleman with a vision to change it all, Cyrus McCormick. Cyrus Hall McCormick was born in 1809 in Virginia to Robert Hall McCormick and Mary Ann Hall. Robert was a farmer and an inventor who had an idea to build a mechanical horse-drawn reaper to harvest grain. He just couldn't make his invention work properly. In 1831, Cyrus, now in his early 20s, asked his father if he could give it a try. It only took 6 months for Cyrus to roll out and demonstrate the first successful mechanized horse-drawn reaper, which he soon patented and continued to refine. McCormick's reaper would later be considered one of the great inventions of agricultural history. It also created a new industry, modern agriculture. With his reaper, a farmer could harvest an acre in 2 hours. The reaper didn't just launch modern agriculture, it changed the makeup of the entire country. McCormick's machine was ideally suited for large farms and flat land, so he traveled to the great Midwest, to Ohio, Illinois, and Wisconsin to sell his reaper. In 1847, Cyrus moved to Chicago, found a business partner, set up a factory, and started making reapers. It was the perfect time to be in Chicago. Factories were sprouting. The railroad made it a major hub. The city was on the verge of an explosion of growth. But it wasn't always easy for McCormick. He had some challenges.
Farmers weren't used to large, complicated machines in agriculture. It was a large investment for a farmer of the time. So Cyrus had a task before him to overcome the skepticism and the reluctance of farmers to embrace his machine. One of the ways that Cyrus overcame the skepticism of farmers was to demonstrate his machine repeatedly, to write editorials for local newspapers. He advertised. In fact, he is something of a pioneer in terms of advertising and marketing a product.
As his company grew, Cyrus added mowers, hay rakes, hay loaders, and other machines that made farming easier. He named his company the McCormick Harvesting Machine Company.
Cyrus McCormick's main accomplishment was building that company. I mean, he made the original invention, that was the foundation of it, but what his real legacy is the company that he built. He built the largest agricultural machinery company in the world. And along the way, he came up with a lot of business innovations. He came up with innovations in terms of marketing, installment plans for selling his machines. So as much as the inventor, he was an entrepreneur and a businessman.
Soon, copycat companies started sprouting up, and it became a time of immense competition, dirty tricks, stolen patents, and ruthless fighting for business. Companies would come into small towns or fairs, trumpeting the latest innovation and challenging all comers to beat them on the field. These fairs became big events. People from small towns would travel from all over to see these competitive marvels, and companies became devious. They would sneak around at night and sabotage machines, throwing chunks of metal and barbed wire into the field with the intention of clogging up rival equipment the next day. McCormick's biggest competition during this time was the Deering Harvester Company. One infamous story of the Deering-McCormick rivalry takes place at the 1900 Paris World's Fair. Deering came out in public with his Automower, advertised as a futuristic sci-fi vehicle that could slice through hay. The McCormick Harvesting Machine Company decided to put this upstart in its place. They had been experimenting with their own Automower and challenged Deering. Even the crown heads of Europe came to this great event. The Deering machine went first, but the hay was so heavy the machine broke down. The McCormick machine went next. It plowed the hay effortlessly. The Deering team got so angry that they went over to the McCormick hospitality tent and started a fight right in front of the European royalty. By this time, McCormick Harvesting Company was being run by Cyrus's son, Cyrus Jr., and Jr. had seen enough. To minimize this competition, he started buying up companies, including Deering. In 1902, Cyrus Jr. established a company with a name reflective of its reach, International Harvester. Today, that company is still in operation as Navistar International. International Harvester had 90% of the market for grain binders, reapers, and mowers, the most common agricultural machinery at the time. They were growing wildly and soon had subsidies in Russia, Germany, France, Australia, New Zealand, South America, every corner of the world.
The McCormick family, starting in the 1860s and 70s, became very, very wealthy along with the growth of their company. They were one of the wealthiest families in America by 1900. They rubbed elbows with J.P. Morgan and Andrew Carnegie and the Rockefellers.
With much of the competition gone, International Harvester could spend more time developing new products and refining old ones. One thing they soon discovered was that gasoline engines were not the only option to fuel their new machines.
Well, 150 years ago, someone had an interesting idea about how to try and make energy work better and use it more efficiently. And they built a contraption that a lot of people had a lot of doubt about. And they ran that contraption off of what we would call today renewable energy, off of some kind of rapeseed oil or peanut oil. And that really was the founding of the diesel engine. Back in the late 1800s, it was first patented by the namesake, Rudolf Diesel. And in the last 100 years, it has become a technology that is ubiquitous in our society.
Diesel engines were first applied in marine vessels and large ferry boats. They were being used to generate electricity in towns. But to understand why diesel engines were so attractive to International Harvester, let's examine the difference between diesel power and gasoline power.
Most everybody knows how an ordinary gas engine operates. Gasoline is supplied to a carburetor, and as air is drawn through the carburetor on the suction stroke, the gasoline and air mix. This mixture of air and gasoline fills the cylinder, and as the piston moves upward on the compression stroke, this mixture is compressed to from 75 to 90 pounds per square inch. Then, an electric spark at the spark plug ignites the charge, which burns and creates pressure to push the piston down on the power stroke. A diesel engine operates on an entirely different principle. It draws in only air, which is compressed to 500 pounds per square inch or more. This high pressure raises the temperature of the air to a point far above that at which oil fuels ignite. The fuel is then injected. It ignites in the high temperature without the use of an electric spark.
This process is more efficient and creates more power than its gasoline counterparts. Let's take a closer look at the man who patented this improved technology. Born in Paris in 1858, Rudolf Diesel moved to Germany at the age of 12, where he soon proved himself a brilliant engineering student. Rudolf was interested in creating a more efficient engine, but his first experiments with a steam engine that ran on ammonia were nearly fatal. A huge explosion sent him to the hospital for a long, painful recovery that would become a history of health and eyesight problems. But Diesel wasn't daunted. He knew even the best steam engines at the time were only 10 to 15% thermodynamically efficient. He knew higher compression would lead to higher efficiency, more power, the ability to move heavier loads. He began experimenting with compressed air and using fuels like peanut oil and coal dust. Upon the invention of the automobile in 1887, he introduced what would later be known as the diesel engine. Those benefits of efficiency and torque would soon become coveted by farmers and crucial to the farming equipment being produced by International Harvester.
The vehicle market was starting to catch up. Vehicles were moving beyond cars into commercial vehicles. They needed to pull a heavier load. They needed to carry more weight, and a diesel engine in some form was considered a pretty good power plant for that. So you started seeing diesel engines moving into trucks, into agricultural equipment, and things that had been powered by steam engines previously. The development of the combine, the development of the ag tractor, the development of trucks really depended on a diesel engine to be able to provide the torque and the horsepower for those things to do what they needed to do.
Its efficiency and reliability spurred the interest in diesel engines, and the fuel to run them at the time cost less, and more farmers embraced this new technology. More diesel-powered tractors and equipment meant fewer farmers were needed to get the work done.
I've been a farmer for 50 years, and I've seen a lot of changes. When I was still a youngster, it would take about 10 hours at least to plant 15 to 20 acres a day with the team of horses. And now with the diesel tractor that I have, you can plant the same acres in about 2 hours. So it's a big time savings, and you didn't feel near as tired when you got done.
The advent of diesel engine-powered agricultural equipment soon caused the great switch of population from the farm into the city, free from the exhausting work that the mechanized reaper eliminated, and now free from the headaches of keeping, feeding, and training animals. Farmers were able to get things done easier and quicker than they had ever dreamed possible. In 1831, when the reaper was first invented, 90% of the United States population lived on a farm. Today, less than 2% do. Diesel engines and their ability to work efficiently and power larger machines were crucial to that dramatic demographic transition.
One thing I think that's been overlooked about the diesel engine is I don't think you could have today's modern agricultural world without the diesel engine. My grandfather used to deliver combines to farmers, and they had 8-foot studded steel wheels and a steam engine. Very inefficient, tore the fields up, not very reliable. So you really couldn't cultivate, plant, and do everything we take for granted in agriculture today without an efficient power plant. The diesel engine became the perfect mode to do that.
The power, efficiency, and dependability of diesel engines soon spread to all kinds of industries. One of those was the Intercontinental Railroad system, which first began using diesel engines in the mid-1920s. Before diesel engines, going from New York to San Francisco would take you up to 6 months. If that train was hauling anything really heavy, it could take even longer.
It's hard to romanticize a diesel engine. People think of steam locomotives, and there's a very romantic cachet to that development. But the diesel engine's what really made it work. You could do it faster, you could carry more goods and services, you could carry more people, and you could move things more efficiently from coast to coast. It took you over the mountains in Denver. It took you over the mountains in the south part. The mountains have always been the great divider, and were always the problem. The steam engine could do some of it. It couldn't do it as efficiently, it couldn't do it as effectively, and it certainly couldn't do it as economically as a diesel engine could.
Diesel research and development at the company began in 1916, and in 1933, International Harvester launched its first production diesel engine. Meanwhile, out west, a project known as Boulder Dam was underway. Better known as the Hoover Dam today, this enormous undertaking would demand building 16,000 feet of concrete tunnels and clearing untold thousands of tons of rocks and dirt. International Harvester was up to the challenge, and their diesel-powered earth movers did the job. Only these machines with diesel engines had the power and the stamina to make that dam possible. At the time, the Hoover Dam became both the world's largest electric power producing facility and the world's largest concrete structure. But in terms of engineering prowess, it was soon to be topped. Of all the great inventions in American history, some consider the American highway system the greatest of them all. It was simply the biggest civil engineering project in world history.
Americans have always been enamored with movement, with transportation. American history really is transportation history. And if you look at the early stages of our westward movement, it was all along trails. Those trails became roads, dirt roads, and then gravel roads, and then asphalt roads, and then superhighways. And our whole real core and history in this country is around roads.
To many, the highway system is what made America what it is today. Its concept goes back to George Washington himself. Washington was worried about the Spanish and the British out in the Western Territories taking over the United States. He knew a road could keep America united. So he launched the National Road, the first government-built interstate highway to ever cross multiple states. But it wasn't until a century and a half later, when another war hero came into office, that the concept was fully embraced. The concept became the Dwight D. Eisenhower Interstate System. Eisenhower had appreciated the need for an interstate highway system years before he was president. During World War I, rail cars in Europe were running at overcapacity. Americans were mobilizing quickly, so America began sending trucks over for ambulances and troop movers. These additional vehicles were able to move the forces stuck in trench warfare and also helped our troops outflank the Germans. After the war, the U.S. Army decided to celebrate its wartime trucking efforts with a great parade of trucks and military equipment across the Lincoln Highway, the only transcontinental highway at the time. They left the White House in July of 1919.
On that truck convoy was Lieutenant Colonel Dwight D. Eisenhower. He didn't lead the truck train, but he was an observation officer with the Tank Corps watching these trucks struggle as they went across the United States. And he later said in his memoirs, "We didn't even know if we could make it." A U.S. Army convoy had never attempted to cross the United States in truck before. It took them 2 months to get all across the United States. They destroyed 88 bridges. These heavy trucks fell through bridges. They got stuck in mud, and many of the trucks had to be left behind as salvaged pieces of equipment.
That's when people realized trucks could do a lot of long hauling in this country if only we had better roads. So years later, with Eisenhower's urging, the U.S. interstate system became a massive project. It would bring us away from the dangerous two-lane highway with extreme curves that made driving treacherous, and replace it with a multi-lane, solidly built system that could easily be traversed with trucks and heavy equipment. It became the largest system ever built. Over 46,000 miles, 105 tunnels, 55,000 bridges, and it seemed to sprout up almost overnight.
When they launched the interstate system in 1956, it was spontaneous combustion, spontaneous construction all over the United States. The first shovel went into the earth just outside of St. Louis, and they got to claim, the state of Missouri, the first groundbreaking of this enormous system. And then after that, instantly, really, you saw construction breaking out in all of the 48 states. And then you saw first bridge built and first tunnel begun. And that really created an enormous amount of excitement.
But how are these bridges going to be built? What machines were going to move all that earth and cut through mountains? Heavy-duty machines were needed, and heavy-duty engines too. Diesel engine-powered machines had already showed their mettle years earlier with the Hoover Dam. But compared to this new job, the Hoover Dam was a piece of cake. Vast numbers of earth-moving trucks, concrete pours, and more were needed. A whole new industry, the heavy equipment industry, had to be launched. And companies like International Harvester, their machines and their diesel engines were needed, and needed quickly.
The explosion in the construction equipment market can really be tracked back to the building of the interstate highway systems, which at the same time led to the development of suburbia, the cities expanding, rebuilding cities, and all the amazing growth that went on in the United States from the early 1950s through the end of the 1960s really was moving dirt, creating neighborhoods, rebuilding cities, building roads, building hospitals, building this great expansion of the American economic system, which was really all carried on the back of the diesel engine.
Americans will be known in history, world history, for its interstate system. It is like the Romans and the aqueducts. It is a superstructure like none other in the world. It's larger than the Panama Canal and the Suez Canals combined. It's larger than the pyramids. The interstate system is unmatched in the world. And this construction, when it was going on in the 1950s and 60s, was a world marvel. People sat back and thought, this is changing transportation as we know it.
The roads meant small towns were connected to the rest of the country. People could drive further, go to better paying jobs, and new trucks were needed to haul goods to all these new suburban areas. Wheat could now move from Kansas City to New York in days, not weeks. Refrigerated trucks transported food from Florida to Denver without spoiling. Overnight shipping changed the fabric of big business. And companies like International Harvester built these trucks, all of which were equipped with the efficient, hard-working, powerful, and dependable diesel engine. The benefits that made diesel engines attractive 75 years ago are what makes them attractive today. Like increased energy efficiency. A gallon of diesel fuel has more energy per volume than a gallon of gasoline. Combine that with a more efficient way a diesel engine burns the fuel with less energy loss to heat, and you get an additional 20 to 40% more energy efficiency. More miles to the gallon, lower emissions, which is why many people are saying diesel's time is now.
A gas truck doesn't get the mileage nearly as well that a diesel does when it's under load.
It's just a good, reliable truck that makes good power and pulls anything I put behind it.
I have a diesel just because of the mileage I drive. I run about 120 miles a day just to work and back.
I buy diesels for the longevity of the engine. I don't have to feel like I'm getting a new one every 100,000 miles.
Now we've got a little over 460,000 miles on the truck. I have a friend that actually is still hauling trailers with his. He has a little over 500,000 miles on his.
Using diesel engines not only saves oil, but also the environment. That's a lot different from most people's perceptions of diesel engines.
As far as diesel being looked at as dirty, I think that is quickly going away.
The soot coming out of these trucks is zero, essentially zero. So these things are very clean.
You know, you can say clean and diesel now in the same sentence.
Folks have always thought about natural gas or gasoline engines as, you know, having no emissions because they don't see anything coming out the tailpipe. Well, it must be clean. And, you know, when you get into that, you understand that there are plenty of things coming out the tailpipe. They're either too small for your eye to see, or they just don't, you know, have any translucence to them. You can't see them even if you did have a good eye. So people saw smoke coming out of a diesel and they said, oh, that's dirty. And then they see nothing coming out of gasoline or natural gas and say, oh, that must be clean. And we all are smart enough to know that that's not exactly right. So, you know, one of the myths is that, you know, a diesel is always dirtier than other technologies, than gas or natural gas or gasoline. And today, that's not true.
Did you know 4 of the top 10 most fuel-efficient vehicles in the world are diesel-powered? And diesel today is more than 90% cleaner than it was 5 years ago. How much cleaner? In 1978, an average gallon of diesel fuel emitted a heaping teaspoon of particles. Today, it's less than a drop from an eyedropper. Diesel engines last longer, too. It's not uncommon to hear some truckers use the same engine for hundreds of thousands of miles, even over 1 million miles. Gas mileage, energy, emissions. Diesel has a lot of fans, and some people wouldn't drive anything else. Call it the cult of diesel.
The diesel consumer that's been out there for the last 15, 20 years that, you know, has now over, you know, 750 or 1 million miles on their pickup truck and still going strong, and they're, you know, proud of it and take it to shows on the weekend. You know, those are the kind of folks that they know, they get it when it comes to diesel, and there's a lot more people that'll get it soon too.
Today, the diesel engine as produced by companies like Navistar is entrenched into our daily lives in ways that might surprise you. Diesel builds our roads and harvests our food. About 2/3 of our farm and construction equipment are powered by diesel engines. They haul our garbage. They transport our children. Over 70% of all school buses are powered by diesel engines. They move our people. Most public transit buses are powered by diesel engines. They move commerce. Most delivery trucks are diesel-powered. They power our military, trucks, tanks, transport equipment. Marine commerce and pleasure craft depend on diesel engines, as do commercial marine vessels such as tankers, barges, and even cruise ships. Most freight trains run on diesel. Cell phone towers have backup diesel generators that help make sure power is always available. If you're in a hospital during surgery and the lights go out, it's a diesel generator that's turning on the power, keeping patients safe. Diesel engines are really everywhere you live.
I always chuckle when I you know, get someone in a room and ask them how diesel affects their life. And, you know, if you have to pick up the phone and dial 911 today and need an ambulance or a fire truck, there's a really good chance that that's going to be powered by a diesel engine. And, you know, there's a conscious decision behind that because of the power, the performance, and especially in that case, the reliability. In 2003, when the lights went out in the Northeast for 24 hours, New York was in the dark, and all the parts of New Jersey in the Northeast corridor. There was one thing, though, that stayed brightly lit that night, and that was the Statue of Liberty. And that was because diesel generators provided backup power for the Statue of Liberty. That's a pretty cool thing. And when you think about that system that's in place that comes on when you need it, you know, if you're in the hospital and the power goes out, 10 seconds, the diesel generator is really the only technology that can kick in and provide a full load performance to carry that electrical demand until the grid can come back up.
Diesel has been spreading overseas for quite some time, too. Places with growing cities and expanding needs like China, India, and South America are all turning to diesel power. Surprisingly, the one vehicle many people don't associate with diesel engines is a passenger car. Diesel engines are already popular in pickup trucks, and while diesel passenger cars only make up about 3% of new vehicle sales in the United States, in Europe, diesels are valued for their economy and dependability.
I don't think what many people realize is that in Europe, if you're 28 years old and buying your first vehicle and you want to do the environmentally responsible thing, more than 50% of those cars are diesel powered, because diesels have such a huge advantage over gasoline engines in fuel economy. They get anywhere from 20 to 30% more fuel economy than the comparable gasoline car. So as a result, they are a very popular car. They're considered the green car in Europe, which is totally opposite of their image in the United States.
So why hasn't the diesel revolution taken over the United States already?
Here in the U.S., we're looking at a potential for that same kind of growth here, not to a 50% level, but from the 3% we are today, there's, I think, a good confidence that we're going to be able to double or triple that easily within the next 5 to 10 years, with the onslaught of new cars coming in that's been made possible by this cleaner diesel fuel that came out about 2 years ago.
Back in the early 1900s, International Harvester actually listed 8 different fuels that a tractor could burn, pre-diesel. So now as time goes by, the different kinds of fuel that are going to be used are going to start varying. I know that there's synthetic fuels that the military is looking at. I know that there's biodiesel coming down the road. I mean, there's progress to be made, because not only as you pump out emissions, you also have to increase the efficiency of the engine. And that's always been what the diesel has been about, is efficiency.
One recent development has been the creation of ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel. This clean diesel produces 97% less sulfur than was produced in the early 1990s.
One of the major advancements in diesel technology was taking sulfur out of the diesel fuel in the last 2 or 3 years. And the analogy we use is it is exactly the same as taking lead out of gasoline in the 1970s. Removing lead from gasoline all by itself was a very positive impact on the environment. You didn't have millions of cars spewing lead into the atmosphere.
Better mileage, cleaner emissions with reduced carbon dioxide, a more durable engine that can last hundreds of thousands of miles. Many think diesel technology will be powering the green cars of the future, not just in the United States, but around the globe.
If you go to some of the emerging markets, some of the developing countries, the air there is filthy. The gasoline engines aren't very good. We followed a bus in one country that was a Russian bus from the 50s. It obviously hadn't been maintained very well, and it was dirty. If you took the diesel engines from Europe, from Asia, from the US, and put them into the markets where they use a lot of engines today, emerging, developing economies, you really could do a lot to clean up the air in the world.
Another benefit that has many eager to expand the use of diesel engines compared to other green technologies is that all the resources we need are already in place.
With electric cars, you're worried about the range that they can go. You're worried about, where does the electricity come from? Does that come from a power plant that's burning dirty coal? So is the car really cleaner? You're not really sure. If you're investing in natural gas technology for whatever reason, can you use that technology in places that don't have natural gas pipelines and compressors readily available? Can you travel cross country as a trucker and know that you're going to be able to find natural gas wherever you need it? And the answer to those questions really is no, you can't. So that makes and limits some of these other technologies in a way that diesel is not limited.
So will there be a diesel car in your garage in the near future? Maybe. One particularly interesting development is diesel hybrids. Now in their infancy, they combine a smaller, lighter diesel engine with electric motors and batteries for even greater fuel efficiency.
One of the most exciting advancements recently is the advent of diesel-electric hybrid technology. And a lot of people think that that really could be the most energy-efficient option out there for a lot of different applications. And people are thinking about it for passenger cars and other things. Probably the most exciting area at the moment for that is public transit buses. And in fact, New York City just placed an order for over 800 buses of all diesel-electric hybrid, and again had the choice of natural gas and other technologies, and they came back to the diesel.
Another promising development that may make an even bigger splash is biodiesel fuel. Rudolf Diesel used peanut oil in his first engines, and now, over a century later, biodiesel is in the headlines. Biodiesel fuel can be made from soybean oil, plant and vegetable oil, animal fat, recycled cooking oil, and more.
With strained relations in certain parts of the world and high skyrocketing fuel prices, biodiesel can really be a part of the solution to help extend our existing diesel fuel supply, as well as make it cleaner and provide environmental benefits at the same time. Biodiesel has over 171 plants across the United States, spread in virtually every state, and that helps to spread the geographic availability as well, which lowers the transportation costs. Some of the environmental benefits of biodiesel we've discussed are the greatly lowered particulate matter, the life cycle CO2 benefits, 78% reduction in life cycle carbon dioxide, lowered particulate matters, lower carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, and other greenhouse gas forming compounds. That has a great benefit for human health value as well. And biodiesel used in combination with regular petroleum diesel really is a wonderful solution that's available today. It doesn't take any futuristic improvements or refinements. You can use it in any diesel engine without modification, and it's readily available. So there's really no reason why you can't give it a try if you already have a diesel piece of equipment or engine.
With these advantages, diesel is here to make a difference today and poised to make a cleaner, more efficient tomorrow. It's no exaggeration to say this country wouldn't have been built without diesel, without the business acumen of people like Cyrus McCormick and the vision of Dwight Eisenhower, without the investments of companies like Navistar's predecessor, International Harvester. The diesel engine continues to gain greater appreciation.
The diesel engine is going to be, in 2010 and 2014, 96 to 98% cleaner.
If you ask a contractor, big or small, what's the most important piece of equipment he's got, it's going to be a diesel engine.
There's some really interesting uses of diesel that people don't even know about. There's little villages around the world that have a diesel generator they can turn on that will help crack corn.
This is a very, very technology-driven industry like it has never been before.
This is a 100-year-old plus technology that's undergone a real fundamental transformation. And if people are making choices about technology, you know that a diesel is going to deliver what you need when you need it.
Diesel today is leading the way as a viable alternative fuel source for the future. It's providing cleaner air for our environment, greater fuel economy for drivers, and an overall reduction in the consumption of our natural resources. Diesel engines have been an instrumental part of our past and a true plan for our future. Diesel truly powers our world, yesterday, today, and tomorrow.